The stepfather of a Canterbury University student who was dead for weeks before he was found in his halls of residence says the accommodation provider sent him an overdue bill while his son's body likely lay undiscovered in his room. 19-year-old Mason Pendrous, who was in his first year studying e-commerce, was found dead on September 23rd. Anthony Holland raised Mason from age 4 with his mother, who died of breast cancer in 2014. Mason called Anthony Dad. Supported by his partner, Teresa, Anthony Holland sat down in the studio with me today, and I started by asking if he could tell us a little bit about Mason.
So Mason was doing an e-commerce degree, and to this day he couldn't explain to me what e-commerce was, and I tried to Google it and I don't know either, so I don't know what he was studying other than e-commerce.
Yeah, and so what about personality-wise? Can you tell us a little about him?
Yeah, there have been a few moments where people have suggested he's a wallflower, but that wasn't his personality. He was gregarious. He was just a fun-loving young man, loved his rowing, loved a lot of things about his world, and was excited about, as he called it, his adventure.
University was the adventure, wasn't it?
University was the adventure, yep, absolutely.
So when was the last time you spoke to him?
I think the date was the 19th of July. It was a Friday night. He rang me at 11 o'clock at night. I'd just gone to bed, and he was a very happy young man at that point at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, as you can imagine some university students can be.
And so that was the last chat. I imagine you've gone back and pored over this kind of stuff, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what was the first sign that something was not right?
I cancelled his fuel card, and I didn't get a phone call from him to say my card's bounced because I hadn't heard from him. I just thought that was a way of getting him to call me, to be honest, because every time I spoke to him, he was too busy, he was out with friends. I get down to Christchurch quite a bit with work, and I suggested we met for dinner and stuff, but he didn't want to. He was too busy doing stuff out with his mates. And to my knowledge, there was no reason not to doubt that. He was just having a good time at university.
He was being an independent young man who'd just moved away from home.
Yeah, now he was also a boarder at Scots College, so his Monday to Fridays included rowing. So he was just enjoying the experience, in my opinion, and every time I spoke to him, there was noise in the background, there was people, and on the occasion, I'm sure he was a little bit drunk as well and tried to pretend he wasn't, but that's all right, he's 19, why wouldn't you be?
So you cancelled the fuel card about when, do you reckon?
I can't remember. Really, it was just a phone call just to get him to the people to get him to call me, if that makes sense. Just because I'd been chasing him, we emailed and we tried to catch him and text him, and it was only really when his phone went from answer phone and calling to number not available, and then suddenly it raised a little bit of suspicion in my mind, and I did email the relevant people at the university.
So who were they? Just generally?
It was from their website. It was a contact us email. Now, where I work, we have quite a strong firewall for emails and stuff. So sometimes stuff doesn't always go through, and sometimes it does. But I reckon on about the 19th, I sent him a text saying, if you don't call me, I'll call the university. And it was pretty much that day that I sent a message.
The 19th of what month was it?
July.
Right.
Yes.
So you sent a text to Mason saying, if you don't call me, I'm getting...
August, yes, sorry, August, my bad.
So when did you send the text?
19th of August.
What? No, email.
The email to the university was the same day.
But he'd been sending texts and emails to Mason's.
I've got pages and pages of stuff.
So you were texting him but not getting any response? And you just thought he was going about his business?
Student life. That's what I thought. His adventure.
And when you made contact with authorities as such, was it the university or was it the Hall of Residence?
Neither of them. So I didn't even realise until last week or the week before that campus living villages were responsible for the accommodation, because when I went onto the website to look for accommodation, I went through the university portal and I I wasn't even aware it was a separate entity. I thought it was one and the same, sitting under the same umbrella almost. And I wasn't even aware that CLV were outsourced by the university.
Yeah, so who did you think ran the Hall of Residence?
I thought it was the university because I went through their portal to look for accommodation. I guess that the contract I should have read a little bit better that said CLV were responsible for running the accommodation.
So when you were paying for the accommodation, you thought you were paying the university for the accommodation?
But I was paying CLV.
Okay. So when you were trying to contact Mason, you're sending texts. Was it unusual for him not to get back to you immediately?
Yeah. He was just a boy doing his thing. There was quite often it would be a week or so before I heard from him. When he was away at boarding, he'd drive off on the Sunday night to go to school, and I wouldn't see him till the Friday or hear from him even. You know, it wasn't uncommon. He was an independent young man who was living his life. It was his adventure, right? So I didn't, in hindsight, which is 20/20 vision, right? In hindsight, it wasn't probably the best thing, but
He didn't want you to.
he didn't want me to. That's correct.
Did you know many of his friends? Did you
Yeah.
Did you try and text or talk to
Absolutely.
them?
So finally I got hold. I got a little bit nervous when this was the second or third time that the phone, young boys, they buy a new phone, they get a new number, they don't always keep the same number. And I thought that he'd just got a new phone like he'd done in the past and didn't ask me for money, so that was a good thing. And I managed to get hold of a friend of his, Raymond, who was in Auckland, and he managed to find a boy down in Christchurch who ended up climbing over the roof to realise something wasn't quite right. And at that point...
Sorry, Anthony, explain that to me. So a friend went, someone went physically looking for him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And how so?
So what happened was I texted a friend of his who was in Auckland who contacted a friend that was in the same halls. No names, no pack drill. This young man decided something wasn't quite right and ended up, to the best of my knowledge, he climbed up over the roof and round and realised something was wrong and ended up contacting security who entered the room.
So this student climbed up onto the building to look into Mason's...
That's our understanding, absolutely.
Room.
We spoke to this young man and that's our understanding.
And so are you any clearer about what happened to Mason?
No. So initial pathology is, the report is undeterminable at the moment. They've still got skin and hair and they're still going to carry out their stuff.
So do you know who was the last person to speak to him and when he was last seen or spoken to?
I absolutely don't know at this stage. The police are still carrying out their investigations. We're being contacted on a daily basis by the police. We haven't spoken to Campus Living Villages since they did their press release. We've not heard anything from them.
No contact from them at all?
Not from CLV at all since they did their press release, and they suggested if something needed to change, they would change it.
Anthony, just to be clear, so had they spoken to you at the time they gave the press conference, spoken to you directly?
Just before they did their press conference, and I've had no contact from them since.
And what was the conversation that you had with them? What did they say to you at that time?
Condolences, sadness, they would investigate. Yeah, there was a suggestion that there'd been 12 deaths in their 13 months of running this worldwide organisation that they have, that they absolutely told me had 12 deaths in 13 months. Was that right?
Around all of their
student villages. And they're a worldwide, they're a global organisation. They're in the UK and Australia and they're all over and even in the US, I'm led to believe. Now, 12 deaths probably isn't a lot, but that strikes me somewhat that there's a little bit of there's a little bit of irony in this pastoral care that they sold to me, that if Mason went missing, nobody checked up on him. They sold me the pastoral care that they would keep an eye on him as a young man in a new town doing stuff. And I feel, I guess not hearing from them, a little frustrated that
Take your time.
I'm not going to cry. So I just feel a bit frustrated that nobody, either at the university or at CLV, chose after 4 or 5 weeks to chase him up, to find out why he had not been to lectures, to find out why he'd not eaten. They swipe in for food. He didn't swipe in. So at some point, an alarm bell must rise and say, hang on, he's not eaten here for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is.
How long do you understand that it had been since he had swiped in for food?
We don't know. That information has left CLV and has gone to the police. We still don't have a final
Date.
We don't have a final date at this stage.
But is it your understanding that Mason was undiscovered for a number of weeks?
Yeah, initially. Initially it was 9 weeks, then it became 8 weeks, now suddenly it's 4 weeks. So the drama of the story really will only be untold, or only be told when the police release their final status, final data. We can only rely on evidence, not hysteria, right? Oh, hysteria is not the right word, I'm sorry.
I understand.
Yeah.
You're waiting for the facts.
Yeah, I'm an engineer, so I wait for facts. I build my stuff around facts. And at this stage, we don't know. We genuinely don't know.
But what you do know is there was a period of time that he was not attending lectures. He wasn't swiping in to collect his meals.
And his accommodation.
Yeah, that's true.
And do you know what, if anything, was done by the university or the Hall of Residence during that time he was absent from some very obvious parts of his life?
The suggestion was he didn't pick up a swipe card in May. There's a suggestion. At that point, they found he was, again, this is an allegation, but it's a story that in May they didn't have his swipe card. They found him eventually. He was difficult to get hold of, but at no point did either the university or CLV ring me and say, there's a red flag here. We can't get hold of him. Something's not quite right. Where is he? Have you heard from him? And I didn't know he wasn't going to lectures. And the boy was an awesome boy. He was a really, really cool kid. And I'm pretty comfortable that it wasn't 9 weeks, and I'm pretty comfortable it wasn't 8. He was a good boy. He was straight up. He told me he was working. He had a casual job. He was studying hard. He was finding the hostel food was okay.
What was he doing for a job?
He worked at Pack and Save in Wellington, and I'm assuming that he worked at Pack and Save down there, just casual, yeah. I'm assuming. He was just a teenager spreading his wings. He was just doing his thing.
So what have the university told you about his absences from lectures? Have they been able to pinpoint anything?
Nothing. There is currently an investigation, an independent investigation with Kit Toogood, QC. He's doing an independent investigation, which I do want to put on record that I find that the terms of reference of the investigation kind of point more towards Mason than the university. It's more about why Mason wasn't there, how Mason wasn't doing it. It's not looking at the university shortfall, in my opinion. I did hit them up with a terms of reference that I thought was a little bit more reasonable.
So specifically, what would you like them to look at?
I'd like to know why I didn't hear, or a parent doesn't hear for a period of time that somebody is not going to their lectures. I need to know that this isn't going to happen to another dad, that you're not going to be sat here with another parent having the same situation.
So on that note,
yes,
the accommodation, the residence, Sonoda, were the bills still being paid while Mason was not accounted for?
Yeah, absolutely. They still chased me for bills. And possibly, at this moment in time, he could have actually been dead when they chased for an account to be paid.
So would the accounts normally come to you, Anthony?
Well, it was a bit of an ironic thing, because it has to a spread a wing situation as a parent. The bills went to Mason, he passed them to me, and I got them paid. Right, I paid them. So it was more about his maturity, I guess, just giving him a little bit of responsibility, that when the bills came through, he got them, he passed them to me. He didn't have to pay them per se, but he sent them to me. But obviously they sent the bill to Mason, he didn't pass it on. They then chased me looking for payment of a bill which was outstanding. At that point, he was more than likely already deceased.
So they were chasing you over an overdue account?
I still have the email, yes.
But apparently hadn't gone and checked with the resident, Mason, as to why the bill might not have been paid.
That's my understanding, and I'll stand by that, absolutely.
What do you make of that?
I can't swear on radio, can I? That sucks. That sucks. It's appalling. It's a good word. It's appalling. Would you pay for a car service if they've not serviced your car? I know that sounds a little bit left of field, but it's the best analogy I can think of at the moment. They had a duty of care. They had a pastoral thing all over their website, which I can't access now. Their website is very different now than it was when Mason and I chose a place to stay.
So part of the reason you chose this particular hall was because you thought they were going to keep an eye on your boy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He was 19. Now, I was very different at 19 than Mason was at 19, and I'm sure everybody's very different these days. I expected pastoral. I expected someone to check up on him, and if he wasn't going to lectures, I expected to hear about that. When he wasn't eating, I expected to hear that. They have a swipe card in their refectory, so when he eats, he swipes in and out. I was informed that it's more of a trust thing, so people come and go all the time. So why would we have a swipe card to swipe in for food if it's just a trust thing?
So do you feel let down in the sense you looked at something that was advertised, you thought you were paying for a particular service, and did you get it?
I don't believe that I got what I was sold. Or Mason, actually, I don't believe Mason got what he bought into and what he sold to him, and I guess what he thought was coming his way. I don't believe in my heart of hearts that was an honest call from them.
John Schroeder, the boss of Campus Living, has said that priority is always given to the welfare of students, but he also says that the accommodation is designed for maximum independence and it doesn't involve automatic interactions and checks. What would you say to that?
I would suggest that there's a small shortfall there, that when people don't swipe in and don't swipe out for a week or a few days, there's a flag. I understand that there's an independence thing. I do get that for a 19-year-old. No question about that. But the shortfall between Sylvie and the university, him not being around and not being seen, I believe that the left hand and the right hand weren't actually either talking or they just... Oh, that's right, they did talk because they sent me the bill.
The flatmates, have you had an opportunity to speak to them?
Yeah, we met some friends on...
You met one of them?
One of them. We met one of them. Good guy. Lots of Scots boys that are in that uni.
He was just a lovely boy.
He was just, yeah, he was a nice boy, and he was a little bit upset in his whole world as well. So I get that.
So those apartments, just so we can understand it, is it close living? I mean, would people in that apartment know if people were coming and going?
I guess I could answer that with a question. If you're in a hotel room and you're there for a month, you don't necessarily see everybody next door, right? Every day, because you all leave and arrive at different times. So is it close? The two doors were 2 feet away from each other. And would it be common? I don't know. I can't answer that question, but I can only kind of assume. Assumption's a very dangerous word, right? I can only assume that they were hadn't seen him, weren't coming and going at the same time. Might have been in the same lectures, I don't know.
But it was more like hotel living rather than what people regard as communal apartment living, where you would all meet for a meal or be sitting in the lounge watching the TV together of an evening.
I believe that's probably the case. That's my gut feeling is a lot of the boys are gamers. They'll sit and play their own. They won't go down to the communal area. There is a communal area there, isn't there, which you can meet up.
It didn't look like it'd been used.
Didn't look like it'd been used at all.
I just want to go back to something that you said. When John Schroeder talked to you about the number of deaths
Yes.
in campus living residents, what did he say about that?
So he informed me that he had been in charge for 13 months. About 13 months, I think he said. He'd been in rest homes, but there'd been 12 passing aways in that 13 months. Worldwide, globally, obviously not New Zealand.
Compared to rest homes.
And he did mention that he'd been in rest homes before, but
Did he think that death rate was unusual? Did he make any comment about that?
No.
It was better than rest homes.
That's what he said to you?
That's what I suggested, and he just laughed and smiled and nodded his head. It was better than rest homes.
So the university has launched this inquiry, and Kit Toogood,
Yes.
a former High Court judge, is leading it. Have you had the opportunity to speak to him directly?
So I have met Kit. We met him last week. He gave us an outline of the terms of reference that they suggested, which we weren't particularly happy with, and we did try to change it.
Have they agreed to change anything?
A few things, but not really to everything. There is a focus that they're pointing more towards Mason than they're pointing towards the shortfall, in my opinion, within the university. So the university have sanctioned this investigation, not Campus Living. My knowledge is it's purely University of Canterbury, and it appears that they are their focus of the terms of reference, personally and through some advice I've received, they kind of point it more towards Mason rather than
What he did rather than what they may have
Absolutely.
done or not done?
Yes, absolutely.
So what do you want to come out of it?
I don't want another parent sat here in front of you talking about this feeling the way I do. I don't ever want this to happen to another young person. Unfortunately, right, death's part of life. I'm not saying this would have changed anything in the outcome. I'm not saying it would have changed, but the period of time and the lack of... Sorry. So the cause of death might never be known. We'll never know. If we'd have checked on him earlier, would we have saved it? We maybe not. But nobody needs to... I couldn't even hug my boy. I couldn't even hug him. The policeman that came to knock at my door at 2 o'clock in the morning, I said, I'm going to get Christ. He went, It was recommended to us not even to bring his body back to Wellington. We had to cremate him in Christchurch and do a roadie back, me and him. Oh, man, this sucks. This is wrong. Sorry.
And you don't want anyone
No
else
other
to go
parent
through
should be
this.
sat doing this.
Do you have confidence that the university investigation will achieve anything?
Hope's a great thing, right? I hope so. I hope so. I hope they learn, CLV learn, I learn, parents learn. Kids generally learn that they keep an eye on each other as well. So...
So I have to ask you, Mason, was he, to the best of your knowledge, happy and healthy? Had he had any issues with mental health?
No, absolutely none. Now, we lost his mum 5 years ago to breast cancer. At that point, he and I just bonded. We bonded before, but we were close, we were tight. We talked about all sorts, man. He was 6'4", he was huge, built like a brick outhouse. Can I say that?
You can.
He was built like a brick outhouse. He was huge. He was strong. He had a great smile. He had munchkin cheeks when he laughed. He was just a really good all-round boy. Mental health, absolutely nothing in my heart suggests for 1 second there were mental health issues at all.
So what would you say to parents? Because it's about this time of the year that they're sorting their university, they're choosing where they're going to stay, they're about to head off full of excitement to start life at uni.
On their adventure?
Yeah, what would you say to parents and those kids?
Keep in touch with each other regularly. And if you've got any doubts at all about the right place, just check it out. Just be careful. Just seriously think about where they're going. I even suggested to Mason not to go, to stay at home, to go to Massey at Wellington, and he was even offered a job at full-time at Pack and Save, and he was going to do a year out. Or I suggested he did a year out, but no, this was his adventure. And that's what he wanted to do, so who am I to stop that young man?
I know hindsight's a great and wonderful thing.
Hindsight's 20/20 vision, right?
Yeah. Would you have done things differently?
Of course I would. So the day we were going down to Christchurch, we were doing a roadie in the car. He packed his bags. He was on the 3 o'clock ferry in the morning. He came to see me at about 2 o'clock. I was staying awake. And he asked me if he could go on his own because it was an adventure. And I said, well, I don't want you to, but if you... And he said, it's what I want to do, Dad. And I went, cool. All right, it's what you want. On the hour, every hour, you ring me. Every hour on the hour. So at 3:30 in the morning, at 4:30 in the morning, at 5:30 in the morning, he just kept ringing me to telling me he was doing all right. And when I went to give him a hug at the front door, he was a big lad, I had to stand on the step to hug him because he was huge. Couldn't find the dog. They actually had the dog on the front seat of the car because he was taking the dog. He was taking the dog to uni with him because, hey, no one didn't know, he's only little. And him and his dog were real close mates. And we had a pretend fight at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning about the dog and who was keeping him. And he just has such a good heart, and I'll always be in his shadow.
Is that the last time you saw him, when you stood on the step and gave him a hug?
Yeah, it was. It was. The big sod tried to steal the dog.
And that was Anthony Holland, who is the stepfather of Mason Pendrous, and he was supported during that interview by his partner, Teresa. Checkpoint understands early pathology and toxicology reports find no presence of drugs or evidence of self-harm. Sonoda, run by Campus Living Villages, is not offering accommodation for first-year students next year, a joint decision made with Canterbury University. Both Campus Living Villages and Canterbury University have declined Checkpoint's requests for an interview. Tertiary Education Minister Chris Hipkins has provided Checkpoint with the following statement. My deepest sympathies are with Mason's family and friends during this difficult time. I'm looking at the regulatory rules and requirements around student accommodation as a result of this tragedy and intend to progress the issue as a matter of the highest priority.